B. Collins.
Peter B. Collins, news and comment. It's Wednesday, April 19th, 2017. Last week, President 45 made a threat. He said that he was sending a carrier group behind the Carl Vinson to the coast of the Korean Peninsula to send a message to Kim Jong-un not to test a nuclear weapon last weekend. Now, it turns out that carrier group is now, apparently, steaming toward the Korean Peninsula almost a week later. But in fact, it was headed in the opposite direction thousands of miles away when Trump issued the threat, and it was backed up by other members of the administration who told the same lie. And so now we have to ask ourselves, was this intentional? Did they figure, well, the North Koreans don't even have the internet, they're not connected to the grid, they don't have advanced radars and other technology like that? And so let's just tell a big, big lie. Let's bullshit Kim Jong-un and see if it works. Now, if that's the case, that is really stupid and a sign of just inexperience and hubris, arrogance. So we now know that the fleet was actually steaming away from the Korean Peninsula. It was headed to some pre-planned maneuvers, apparently with some Australian Navy ships. And so now they say that today, well, actually yesterday, the aircraft carrier was actually heading north after it had sailed south. Now, this is humorous on a certain level. I mentioned this yesterday kind of in passing, but it has blown up into a kind of international incident. Part of this because South Korea is in the middle of a contentious presidential election campaign after they impeached and removed from office the woman named Park who was accused of corruption. And so we have to ask ourselves, is this a blunder by the Trump administration? Did Trump say something and everybody else had to get in line and cover for his mistake? Or was this a conscious effort to pretend the U.S. was doing something when it actually wasn't? And in the real world, these things have consequences. We have the defense secretary who said on April 11th that the Vinson was on her way up to the peninsula. Sean Spicer, the mouthpiece at the White House. When you see a carrier group steaming into an area like that, it is clearly a huge deterrence. So we, along with the rest of the world, were misled into believing that the U.S. was making a military statement by sending the carrier group off the Korean Peninsula. So South Koreans feel bewildered, cheated, manipulated by the United States. Some people took comfort from the fact that we had sent the carrier group. Others were concerned that it was going to possibly stir up a conflict. But this becomes a very serious issue that you've got to examine, because Trump has, frequently lied in his book, Art of the Deal. He says that, it's okay to exaggerate and to essentially bullshit. And when you're posturing, over a couple of $1 million on some big real estate deal, lying to the person across the table probably doesn't seem like a big deal to somebody like Donald Trump. But a former Navy officer and defense analyst at the Institute for Far Eastern Studies in Seoul, whose name is Kim Dong-Yub, said there is no way for South Korea not to have known that the Carl Vinson would not be in Korean waters last Saturday. So this presents a credibility problem for the interim government in Seoul and the candidates for president there. And here's a comment from Shin In-kyun, a military expert who runs the civic group Korea Defense Network. He said that Trump appeared to have used the Carl Vinson as a feint aimed at preventing North Korea from conducting a nuclear test. It would have been very awkward for the South Korean military to come out and clarify when they knew that Trump was bluffing. But then he goes on to say, this guy Shin, the bluffing worked, in fact, because North Korea didn't do a nuclear test last Saturday. Now, that is so presumptuous, because it was anticipated. It was there was concern that the 105th anniversary of the founder of North Korea's birth was going to be used to set off one of these nuclear missile tests, but it didn't happen, and we have no knowledge that it was actually planned. And so to claim that something that was not a confirmed plan didn't happen because Trump didn't send a carrier group off the coast of North Korea but pretended to, I mean, come on. This is circuitous bullshit. And I, for one, just can't tolerate it. So if this were an isolated incident, we might say, oh, this is constructive ambiguity. You know, Trump says he doesn't like to telegraph his intentions. He has secret plans, right? Well, we now know, after an independent and international investigation of an American bombing raid in Syria that occurred on March 16th, where the Pentagon flatly said, we did not hit the mosque. We bombed other nearby buildings. Well, it is now proven from facts on the ground that, in fact, the United States military bombed this mosque in the town of Al-Jinnah, Syria. And so we were lied to about that. You know that I believe that Trump is lying about the claim that the Syrian government was responsible for a sarin gas attack, a chemical weapon that was dropped from an aircraft near Khan Shaykhun almost 2 weeks ago now. And because the evidence doesn't support the contentions, and because Ted Postal, the MIT professor, has debunked the claims from the White House, this is an administration in its early going that has already shattered its own credibility. Now, led by Trump, you know, it's hard to advance or extend any credibility to them to begin with. But after all, he is performing the role of president, and other people take that seriously. Then we have the case of the way the Trump team has dealt with Iran. And most of the Trumpers want to scuttle the international agreement that was struck in 2015 regarding the alleged nuclear intentions of Iran. And yesterday, as required by the agreement, Secretary of State Rexon Tillerson issued a certification that Iran is continuing to comply with that nuclear agreement. Now, because of their coziness with Israel, which wants to scuttle the deal, the Trump team demonizes Iran, and in this certification, they had to take an irrelevant swipe because the certification was delivered only 90 minutes before the midnight deadline yesterday, and the news release had a headline that said, Iran continues to sponsor terrorism. Now, if you want to make that case in a separate issue, I would be prepared to study the materials, but on the face of it, you know, that is an erroneous and irrelevant claim. And sponsoring terrorism is when they support groups that the United States is opposed to. And so we see this administration that is playing fast and loose with what you and I would call facts. And they believe they can create whatever reality they want, and that everybody else is just going to passively accept it. And we have the behavior of the Trump family, with Ivanka now settled into the White House in a cushy office. And she claims that she's not running her business, the Ivanka Trump clothing and fashion line. But the business continues to thrive in her absence. And it's not really a coincidence, in my view, that when the president of China came to the United States, to the Trump facility at Mar-a-Lago, that Ivanka was invited to one of the meetings, And almost in the same breath, I believe it happened within the same day or two, she received notification of approval of new Chinese trademarks, 4 of them, for marketing her stuff in China. And as you may know, China is very careful about issuing these trademarks, and this appears to be a back-scratching situation. And clearly, Trump and his children, who are playing various roles in his administration, whether they're paid or not, they have a serious and obvious conflict of interest. And while there are Democrats who raise the issue, there is an effort to impeach Trump. My friend Norman Solomon is running a petition online. It's, I believe, impeachdonaldtrumpnow.org. And congressional committees are kind of meandering along and saying, well, we're going to take a look at the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution. But this is truly outrageous, and they are not bending the rules. They are trashing the rules that other people have to live by, because they are the Trumps. They perceive themselves as American royalty, and there will be a price to pay for that, a comeuppance. I don't know who will deliver it or when, but I feel pretty sure it will come. Now, one guy we can count on not to investigate the Trumps is the chair of the House Oversight Committee, Jason Chaffetz. He's a Utah Republican, a Tea Party darling, and he rose to the chairmanship pretty quickly. He's completing his 7th term, and then he says he's going to bail. He has announced that he will not run for re-election to Congress in 2018. There is a Democratic challenger, Catherine Allen, a physician, who has already raised more than $400,000 more than Chaffetz for elections in the coming cycle. And Chaffetz has also drawn a primary challenger, a Republican lawyer named Damian Kidd. Now, he's the guy who, went after the Secret Service. He also was very aggressive in investigating Hillary Clinton wherever the opportunity arose. But Jason Chaffetz isn't too interested in investigating Republicans. The Oversight Committee doesn't appear to have a role in any of the current investigations of Trump-Russia, Mike Flynn's contacts with the Russian ambassador, and other issues like the corruption matters that I just referenced that really deserve serious investigation, and he chairs the committee that should be doing it. But nah, he's going to amble toward retirement, go back to Utah, spend more time with his family. Meanwhile, in that special election to fill Tom Price's seat, which was previously held by Newt Gingrich in Georgia, a Democratic newcomer, fueled by mountains of outside cash, a guy named John Ossoff, came within 2 percentage points of clearing the field and winning the seat outright in a race that included, I think, 18 people. He got 48.1%. His nearest Republican opponent got only 20% of the vote. Now, that's going to even out in the runoff. There's little doubt about that. The woman who came in second is Karen Handel. She is a former Georgia Secretary of State. She ran unsuccessfully for governor and senator, so she does have a track record, and people know her in Georgia. And it's really funny because I don't really go to great lengths to cover these special elections. They are special in terms of the local impact and the role of the person who vacated the seat and whether, there is somebody who's really poised to take that. I don't believe that these special elections are any kind of a harbinger for gains by the Democrats, for example. Picking up one seat when you are down 25 in the House really doesn't make a big difference. But it's great for the activists. It keeps the base busy. And 95% of the money that Ossoff raised came from outside the district. and he was attacked because he lives just over the border of the district line. And this occurs whenever there is a case like this. But if you study the Constitution, a member of Congress is not required to live in the district that she or he represents. It's as simple as that. And you can make a carpetbagger claim, and, you can try to embarrass the person. But the bottom line is that it's not a requirement, and so hammering them for it is just a political attack. Nonetheless, it was used. I heard Rush Limbaugh reading the talking points. Trump sent a tweet out and a robocall, and, he talks about outside money, and he's an outside influence himself. So the hypocritical claims that are made in a campaign like this, I can only be amused by. Every day I pause for a second and thank the people who support my work here at the Peter B. Collins Podcast with your subscriptions. People like Susan Lundgren, George Reeves, Faith Peoples, and Andrew Harnack. They've all got monthly subscriptions. They kick in a few bucks, and I'd like you to do it too. It would help keep things going, keep the lights turned on, the internet connected, and pay my phone bills. I don't make a lot of money hosting this podcast, maybe minimum wage, but I do it because I love it and because people tell me that they value it. And if it's of value to you and you have spare change, why don't you come over to peterбcollins.com. Click on the menu tab, pull it down, click on Become a Subscriber. That takes you to the sign-up page where you've got options for bonus books and various levels of support. You can also make a one-time contribution of any amount via PayPal or by mailing a check, money order, or cash to my P.O. Box. All the info is on the sign-up page at peterbcollins.com. Well, the heartbreaking stories continue on almost a daily basis. And today it's about the Trujillo family of Fairfield, Ohio, not far from Dayton and Cincinnati, which is where I grew up. Now, Maribel Trujillo is the mother of 4 U.S. citizens, but she does not hold citizenship herself. She has lived in the U.S. for over 15 years, never been accused of a crime or committed any crime, no convictions for any crime, but she is subject to deportation, and the cruel minions of the Trump administration put her on a plane for Mexico on Wednesday morning today. And she hasn't been there for almost 2 decades, and it leaves her kids, the youngest just 3 years old, without their mother. Now, what's the value of deporting Maribel Trujillo? What does it prove? Who does it help? Who does it hurt? It's really an empty exercise in pandering to the nationalists and racists who put Trump into office. And Trump had said that he was going to focus on getting the bad guys, murderers, rapists, drug traffickers. But this is really just a dragnet approach. Anybody they can find who doesn't have papers has got to go. And it doesn't matter what they contribute to society, what their loss will cost to their families and to their communities. Nope. Because politics is more important than any of that. And as I mentioned yesterday, the number of undocumented people who have been deported who have absolutely zero criminal history has doubled in the past 6 weeks. And we also have the report of what appears to be the first dreamer who has been deported. 23-year-old Juan Manuel Montes had been protected from removal by Obama's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. He had been in the United States since the age of age 9, but he was expelled to Mexico in recent days. And I picked up from a columnist in the San Francisco Chronicle, Otis R. Taylor Jr., some interesting data that I wasn't aware of. Almost half of the children who live in California live with at least one immigrant parent. Now, that immigrant parent may have a green card, may even have citizenship. But many, in that 49.5%, do not. In some counties, like Alameda County, where Oakland is situated, 54.5% of the children are living with at least one parent born outside the United States. And nationally, there are 5 to 6 million children who are U.S. citizens themselves and have at least one parent who was born outside the United States. Again, we don't have solid stats on exactly the immigration status of that pool of parents, but you can make your own deductions. In Cleveland, Ohio, there's one happy guy. His name is Evan King. He is being released from the state penitentiary today after 23 years behind bars for a crime that he did not commit. The Innocence Project has scored another exoneration, and he was convicted of murder and rape. The victim had DNA that was found under her fingernails and from a semen sample. Those samples matched, but they didn't come from King. And it's been 7 years since they began the process of presenting this evidence and winning his exoneration. And I'm very proud of the Innocence Project and others like it around the country. There's one called Centurion Ministries in New Jersey who reach out and help people with credible claims of innocence. But this is being undermined by a move made by Attorney General Jeffrey Beauregard Jim Crow Sessions, who has scrapped the National Commission on Forensic Science that has been providing the scientific support for the DNA-based investigations and exonerations that have occurred. More than 350 men have been released from prison because they were innocent. And Jeff Sessions, he's not too interested in seeing any more innocent people released. I'm learning that the Republicans who keep talking about repealing Obamacare, one of the incentives that they plan to put in the next package is a long-sought effort of Republican funders. It is to limit the possible damages, if not eliminate the possibility of lawsuits for malpractice against doctors and the manufacturers of drugs and medical devices. Now, here in California, we have suffered with a law called MICRA that caps compensation at $250,000 for what are called non-economic damages. Those are penalties that would be paid by the malpracticing doctor or corporation. And this has meant that many people in California cannot sue because they can't get a lawyer who's willing to work with a cap of $250,000. And this has meant that many people who have been maimed or killed were unable to get any appropriate compensation beyond the direct loss that could be proven. Scientists are gearing up for a massive march in Washington and around the country this Saturday. And the March for Science came out of a Reddit thread. A University of Texas postdoctoral fellow named Jonathan Berman decided to put the idea into motion. They set up a Facebook page promoting the march, and it almost immediately attracted more than 300,000 members. Now, they're not predicting a huge turnout. They're afraid to because they have no idea exactly who will show up to support science this Saturday. But it appears that many scientists who rarely step out in public and protest will participate in an effort to defend science from the various attacks, including the EPA's rejection of the coal power standards, and so many other issues that are being rolled back in Washington today. And as I end the News and Comment podcast today, we have news about two of America's biggest blowhards. Up first, Bill O'Reilly, who is a proven sexual predator, harasser, and an all-around arrogant asshole, has been officially let go from the Fox News channel. He really is the guy who made Fox News what it is. His primetime show draws 4 million people a night. It's the top ratings getter in cable news. And his kind of domineering but folksy dad figure was very popular with many of the Fox News junkies. But after the New York Times revealed the $13 million worth of settlements among, 3 or 4 women, then a 6th woman came public, and just yesterday, a 7th woman who has not been named filed a complaint with Fox alleging that O'Reilly had made disparaging racial and sexual remarks to her when she worked there back in 2008. So this is a chapter that will end. It's going to cost the Murdoch family quite a bit of money. They just re-signed Bill O'Reilly to a multi-million-dollar, multi-year contract. I believe he was earning in the range of $10 to $14 million a year, and so there will be a big payout. But Fox, of course, following the sexual harassment exit of Roger Ailes, the guru who founded it and ran it with an iron fist for so long, they have recognized that they got a big problem. And it really wasn't driven home to them until the advertisers started to refuse to run their commercials on the O'Reilly factor. And it was the business losses and the risk to their latest effort to win controlling interest of the Sky news channel in Britain that apparently led the Murdochs to say, well, Bill, it's been grand. Please, don't let the door hit you on your way out. And the other blowhard who's making news these days is Alec Jones from Austin, Texas. And he is in a real pickle because his wife is suing for full custody of their children. And this has required the lawyers for Alex Jones to tell the court that the Alex Jones that you see at InfoWars and on those loony video clips that circulate on social media, he's just a performance actor. That's not the real Alex Jones. And I'm linking to an interesting story about Alex Jones written by Ken White. And Ken White wrote this for the LA Times. He's an attorney, and he blogs under the name Pope Hat. I don't know where that came from. And I first encountered Ken White when he wrote a piece that legally supported the interests of Roger Schuler while he was locked up behind those bogus contempt of court charges in Alabama. But Pope Hat, Ken White, also took a lot of swipes at Roger Schuler without really being fair or fully knowledgeable of the work that Roger has done. That said, his piece about Alex Jones is fascinating here. He writes, a talk radio host, Jones runs the alarmingly popular conspiracy websites InfoWars and Prison Planet. His star rose dramatically during the rumor-fraught 2016 presidential campaign, and he is known for proclaiming that the Sandy Hook school shooting was a government false flag operation, questioning the official story of 9/11, taking his shirt off on camera, and receiving effusive praise from Trump. Now, what Pope Hat cites here is part of my problem, because it's really annoying to me that Alex Jones is so outlandish, outrageous, and untethered that when he raises questions about Sandy Hook, and there are legitimate questions about the narrative of what happened at Sandy Hook, whether there was a second shooter, because the official story doesn't match the original real-time reporting of the events. And then there were substantial efforts by the state of Connecticut and others to cover up and to prevent honest investigation into the crimes that occurred at that school in Sandy Hook. The town is Newtown. The school was called Sandy Hook. And I offer this example because no one now can really touch the questions about what happened at Sandy Hook. Likewise, when you see a guy like Alex Jones embrace the call for truth about 9/11, it makes everybody else who makes that call look like an idiot like Alex Jones. And it's a way that they demagogue these issues, marginalize critics and skeptics and people who have honest and credible issues to be raised. So in this custody case, the lawyers for Jones are saying that the guy that you see on the tube is a character. He is a performance artist. And judging his stability based on that performance, says the lawyer, would be like judging Jack Nicholson based on his portrayal of the Joker in Batman. So is the real Alex Jones a regular guy and a good dad? Or is he the nutty guy that we see in media? And Popat raises some good precedents here. We know about Hulk Hogan. He successfully sued Gawker Media for invasion of privacy. They published a sex tape. And Hulk Hogan, whose real name is Terry Bollea, successfully argued that Hulk Hogan is a character and that Hulk Hogan had bragged about his sexual prowess, but that Gawker invaded the privacy of his private persona. And the court held that that was correct. Then there is Michael Savage, the nutty right-wing host based here in the Bay Area. He sued the Council on American Islamic Relations because they used some of the hateful rants that Michael Savage does on his radio show in in their fundraising messages. And then Michael Savage sued, his real name is Michael Weiner, claiming that CARE was treating a persona that embodies American rage as the real Savage and unfairly painting the real Savage as a racist when he's saying that only his radio persona has racist proclivities. Now, that is a defense that didn't work, and a federal court dismissed it. Then we have one more case here. Donald Trump was accused by Cheryl Jacobus of being defamed in Twitter tweets. In a tweet, Trump suggested that she had begged him for a job. Well, a judge found that Trump's Twitter persona was far too bombastic to be taken literally, as defamation requires. The president's Twitter character deals in vague and simplistic insults, said the judge, deflecting serious consideration. Because no reasonable person would accept that character's insults as statements of fact, the judge ruled they were not defamatory. Wow. It's really getting harder to separate fantasy from reality, friends. Thanks for listening to my daily news and comment podcast. This series of podcasts is available every day on YouTube. I'm Peter B.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling.